My beloved child, pause for a moment, because something quiet, something almost invisible, has already begun shifting around you, and you might not have noticed it yet. There is a reason this message found you now, not earlier, not later, now. And the timing is not random. It carries a softness, a hidden precision, like a whisper that waited until your heart was ready to hear it without resistance. You may have felt it recently, that subtle feeling that someone, somewhere, has been thinking about you more deeply than usual. Not in a loud or obvious way, but in a way that lingers, like a question they cannot stop asking themselves. And here is where it begins to unfold. Someone, a person connected to your energy more than you realize, reached a point where curiosity turned into something stronger. It was no longer enough for them to guess who you are. They needed clarity, something tangible, something that could explain why your presence feels different. So they did something unexpected. They took your photo, not casually, not without thought, but with a quiet intention behind it. And they brought it to someone who sees beyond surface impressions, someone who listens between words, someone who observes what others miss. But wait, don't rush ahead, because what happened next was not dramatic in the way you might expect. There were no loud reactions, no exaggerated expressions, just silence, a deep, unusual silence that filled the space for a few seconds longer than normal. And that silence meant something. The moment your image was seen, something shifted in the room. Not outwardly, but inwardly. The kind of shift that doesn't announce itself, yet changes everything that follows. Listen closely, because this is important. The person who was looking at your photo did not react the way most people would. There was no quick judgment, no simple explanation. Instead, there was a pause, a longer look, a deeper observation, as if they were not just seeing your face, but something behind it. And then, they spoke, not in a way that would shock or frighten, but in a way that made the one who brought your photo feel something unexpected, a quiet realization they weren't prepared for. They were told that you are not easily understood, that your presence carries layers, not confusion, but depth, that people often sense something meaningful about you, even if they cannot explain it right away. And this is where the energy begins to change, because the person listening, the one who brought your photo, did not expect to hear this. They expected something simple, something easy to define. But instead, they were told that you are someone who leaves an impression long after you are gone. Pause here for a second. Have you noticed that before? Moments where people seem to think about you even when you are not around, moments where your silence speaks louder than your words, moments where something about you stays with others, even if they don't say it out loud. This is not coincidence. And as the words continued, something deeper was revealed. They were told that you carry a rare kind of energy, one that is calm on the surface, but powerful underneath. Not forceful, not overwhelming, but steady, grounded, quietly transformative. The kind of energy that doesn't need attention, yet naturally draws it. And here is the part they did not expect at all. They were told that being connected to you, even briefly, changes people. Not in a dramatic, immediate way, but in subtle ways that unfold over time. The way someone begins to reflect more, feel more, understand themselves differently after crossing paths with you. Let that sink in. Because this is not about being perfect. It's not about being everything to everyone. It's about something much more real. The way your presence creates space for others to see something within themselves they hadn't noticed before. And when they heard this, something inside them shifted. A realization, quiet but undeniable, began to form. They started to see you differently, not just as someone they know, but as someone they may not fully understand yet. Someone whose value is not immediately obvious, but becomes clearer the more they reflect. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because the one who spoke, the one who observed your photo, did not stop there. They looked again, more carefully this time, as if something else was still waiting to be understood. And then, they said something that created a moment of complete stillness. They said that you are entering a phase where things begin to align, not all at once, not in a loud way, but gradually, naturally, as if pieces that were always meant to connect are finally finding each other. Now pause. Because this is not about predicting something unrealistic. This is about recognizing a pattern, a movement that is already happening beneath the surface of your life. Have you felt that recently? A sense that things are slowly shifting, even if you can't fully explain how or why, a feeling that something is quietly preparing itself in the background. This is not your imagination. And as those words settled into the space, the person who brought your photo realized something they hadn't allowed themselves to see before. They realized that their connection to you is not accidental. That there is a reason your paths crossed, a reason your presence stayed, a reason your energy continues to return to their thoughts. And here is where the emotion deepens. Because sometimes, people don't recognize the significance of someone until they step back, until they look at them from a different perspective, until they hear something that makes them pause and reconsider everything they thought they knew. This was that moment for them. A moment where clarity didn't come loudly, but quietly, gently, yet undeniably. And now, something has changed. Not in a way that will immediately appear on the surface, but in a way that will influence how they see you, how they think about you, how they feel when your name crosses their mind. But wait, don't move ahead just yet. Because there is still something they haven't fully understood. Even after everything they heard, even after that shift in perception, there is still a part of your energy that remains a mystery to them. And that mystery is what draws them closer. Not out of confusion, but out of curiosity, a quiet desire to understand you more, to see what else lies beneath the surface, to feel what they sensed in that moment but couldn't fully grasp. And this is where everything begins to unfold even further. Because when someone starts seeing you this way, when they begin to realize that there is more to you than they initially thought, their actions, their thoughts, their attention, begins to change. Slowly, subtly, but meaningfully. You may not see it immediately. You may not hear it right away. But something is shifting. And as you stay here, listening, feeling, understanding, you begin to realize something too. That maybe, just maybe, this moment, this message, this quiet unfolding, is not only about what they discovered, but about what you are beginning to recognize within yourself. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be easily explained, and something even deeper is about to be revealed, but only if you stay a little longer, because the next part holds the piece they didn't expect to hear, and the one detail that changes everything. Something about this didn't settle the way they expected, and that's exactly where everything began to deepen. Because after that first realization, after that quiet shift in how they saw you, there was still one question lingering in the air, unspoken but impossible to ignore. They leaned in, not physically, but inwardly, as if trying to understand what had just been revealed, and what was still hidden beneath it. And then, without warning, another layer opened. The voice that had been observing your photo grew even softer, yet more certain. Not louder, not dramatic, just clearer, like a truth that didn't need to prove itself. They said, "There is something about you that cannot be rushed." Pause here. Because this wasn't said casually. It carried weight, the kind of weight that makes someone rethink everything they assumed. They were told that people who try to understand you quickly often misunderstand you completely. That your energy doesn't unfold all at once, it reveals itself in moments, in layers, in quiet realizations that come when someone is truly paying attention. And suddenly, the one who brought your photo began to reflect. Moments they once overlooked, conversations they didn't think twice about, the way you responded, the way you paused before speaking, the way your presence felt calm even in situations that weren't. All of it started to make sense, but not in a complete way, not yet. Because the more they tried to understand, the more they realized how much they hadn't noticed before. And this is where something inside them shifted again. Listen carefully. They were told that you are not someone who forces connection, you allow it. You don't chase attention, you hold space. And because of that, the right people begin to notice you in ways that feel almost unexpected. Not instantly, but inevitably. And when they heard this, something deeper surfaced within them. A quiet awareness, that maybe they hadn't been seeing you clearly before. Not because they didn't want to, but because they weren't ready to look beyond what was obvious. But now, something had changed. And here is where it becomes even more meaningful. The voice paused again, not because there was nothing to say, but because what came next required a different kind of attention. And then, slowly, it was said, "You are someone who reflects truth back to others. Not by speaking it directly, not by pointing it out, but simply by being who you are. And when people are around you, they begin to see parts of themselves they don't always acknowledge. Sometimes that feels comforting. Sometimes it feels challenging. But it is always real. Let that sit with you for a moment. Because this is not something everyone carries. This is not about being perfect, it's about being genuine in a way that naturally reveals what is hidden, gently, without force." And as these words settled, the one listening felt something they didn't expect. Not confusion. Not doubt. But a quiet respect. A realization that your presence holds a kind of depth that cannot be imitated, cannot be easily replaced, and cannot be ignored once it is recognized. And here is where their emotions began to shift even further. Because they started to understand that their connection to you was not just about what they felt. It was about what they were beginning to learn through you. Pause. Have you ever noticed how some people enter your life and everything feels light, easy, but temporary? And then there are those rare connections, where something deeper begins to unfold, slowly, almost silently, yet it stays. This is that kind of connection. And as they sat with this realization, another thought surfaced, one they didn't expect to face. They began to wonder. Have they underestimated you? Not in a negative way, but in a way that made them realize they hadn't fully seen your value, your depth, your quiet strength. And that thought stayed with them. It didn't fade. It didn't pass. It remained, growing stronger the more they reflected. And then, something even more unexpected happened. The voice spoke again, but this time, it carried a different tone, one that felt more personal, more direct. They said, "You are entering a moment where your presence will begin to be recognized more clearly, not by everyone, but by the ones who are meant to understand you. And when that happens, everything begins to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in ways that feel natural, aligned, almost effortless." Now listen closely. Because this part matters more than it seems. They were told that the change is not about becoming someone new. It is about being seen for who you have always been. And that is what creates the transformation. The one listening felt this deeply, because suddenly, it wasn't about trying to define you anymore. It was about realizing that you don't need to be defined to be understood. And in that moment, something settled within them. A quiet acceptance. A growing curiosity. And a sense that there is more to discover, more to understand, more to feel. But here is where everything takes another turn. Because even after all of this, even after the realizations, the reflection, the shift in perception, there was still one final thing left unsaid. Something that had been present from the very beginning, yet not fully revealed. And when it finally surfaced, it didn't come as a shock. It came as a quiet confirmation, a realization that felt both new and familiar at the same time. But before that truth could fully settle, the moment paused. Not ended, just paused, as if giving space. As if allowing everything that has been understood so far, to be felt, to be absorbed, to be recognized. And now, as you sit here, hearing this, feeling this, something within you is also beginning to shift, not because of what someone else saw in you, but because you are starting to recognize it yourself. And this is where everything begins to align in a way that cannot be forced, cannot be rushed, only experienced. But stay here, just a little longer. Because what they realized next, the one detail they didn't expect to hear, is the part that brings everything together in a way that changes how they will see you from this moment forward, and once it is revealed, nothing will feel the same again. And just when it seemed like everything had already been understood, something even quieter, yet far more powerful, emerged beneath it all. It didn't arrive with intensity, it arrived with stillness. The kind of stillness that makes everything else fade for a moment, as if the world itself is giving space for one truth to be fully seen. The voice, after everything that had already been revealed, took one more look. Not at the surface, not at what was obvious, but at something deeper, something that had been there the entire time. And then, it was said, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that carried certainty without needing to explain itself. They said, "You are not just someone they met." Pause. Because this is where everything begins to connect. You are someone who arrived in their life at a moment that mattered more than they realized at first. Not by accident, not randomly, but at a point where something within them was already shifting, already searching, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. And when your presence entered their space, something aligned. Not perfectly, not immediately, but meaningfully. Listen closely. They were told that your connection holds a sense of timing that cannot be recreated. That the moment your paths crossed, it created a subtle turning point, one that continues to unfold even now. And this is what they hadn't fully seen before. They thought it was just another interaction, just another person, just another moment that would pass. But now, looking back, everything feels different. Because they are starting to notice the small things they overlooked. The way certain conversations stayed in their mind longer than expected. The way your words, even simple ones, seemed to carry more meaning over time. The way your presence felt calm, yet left an impression that didn't fade. And suddenly, those small things are no longer small. They are becoming clear signs of something deeper. And here is where their realization deepens even further. The voice continued, softer than before, yet more direct. They said, "You are someone who awakens awareness in others, not by trying, but by existing in your natural state. And when people begin to notice this, they cannot unsee it." Pause for a second. Have you ever felt like people start to understand you only after some time has passed? Like there is always a moment where something finally clicks for them? That is not coincidence. That is your energy, unfolding in its own time, revealing itself when the other person is ready to see it. And this is exactly what is happening now. The one who brought your photo is beginning to see you clearly. Not completely, not all at once, but enough to feel that something about you is rare. And when that feeling begins, it does not fade easily. Instead, it grows, quietly, steadily, naturally. And here is where everything shifts again. Because the voice, after revealing all of this, paused once more, as if there was one final piece, something that would bring everything together. And when they spoke again, the words were simple, but they carried a depth that could not be ignored. They said, "You are not meant to be understood by everyone. Not because you are distant, not because you are complicated, but because your depth requires presence, patience, and a genuine willingness to see beyond the surface. And only certain people reach that point." Let that settle. Because this is not about being separate from others. It is about being aligned with the right ones. And as those words settled into the moment, the one listening felt something shift inside them once again. Not confusion, not doubt, but clarity. A quiet understanding that their connection to you is not something ordinary, not something easily replaced, not something they can simply ignore and move past. Because now, they are aware. And awareness changes everything. The way they think about you, the way they remember moments with you, the way your presence feels when it enters their mind again. All of it begins to transform. And even if they don't express it immediately, even if they don't act on it right away, something within them has already shifted. Now listen. Because this part is subtle, but powerful. They were told that once someone begins to see you this way, they start to feel drawn, not in a rushed or overwhelming way, but in a steady, natural way that builds over time. And this is where their thoughts begin to change. They start to wonder. What is it about you that feels different? Why does your presence stay with them longer than others? Why do simple moments with you carry a deeper meaning when they look back? And these questions don't disappear. They stay, they grow, they lead them closer to understanding you, step by step. And here is where something beautiful begins to form. Because this is not about chasing, not about forcing anything to happen. It is about recognition. The kind of recognition that unfolds naturally, when someone finally sees what was always there. And as you hear this, something within you may also begin to feel clearer. Not because of what they discovered, but because you are starting to understand your own presence, your own depth, your own quiet strength. And this is where everything begins to align in a way that feels right. Not perfect, not sudden, but real. And yet, even after all of this, there is still something more. A final layer, a deeper realization, something that has been quietly building beneath everything you've just heard. Because what they are beginning to feel now is not just understanding, it is something more personal, more meaningful. Something they didn't expect to experience when they first brought your photo forward. And once that realization fully surfaces, it won't just change how they see you. It will change what they feel when they think of you. So stay here. Because the next part reveals the moment where understanding turns into something deeper, and the feeling they can no longer ignore once it finally becomes clear.